Welcome to PAMED Talks, a podcast brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. I'm Dana Lombardo, PAMED Outreach Specialist, and for today's resident wrap-up episode, I'm joined by Minahil Abbas. Minna is PAMED's policy administrator, and she's here to discuss the PAMED resolution rating and internal policy-making process. Welcome, Minna.
Thank you so much for having me, Dana. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. So we're already deep into resolution season for the 2026 House of Delegates, and that means big ideas are being turned into real proposals that can help shape PAMed policy. But let's be honest, writing a resolution can feel intimidating, especially if you've never done it before. What are the first steps? What should you keep in mind? And how do you make sure that your idea lands? Those are the questions that we're going to be unpacking today. So without further ado, Minna, let's get started. And to kick it off, what is a resolution?
I think we're all familiar. PAMED has an internal policy compendium that helps guide a lot of our work. And so a resolution is the formal mechanism for establishing PAMED policy and or having PAMED take action. It generally defines a problem in the setup of the resolution and then directs a specific course of action for PAMED to take. And then it'll be introduced and debated at the House of Delegates as it is submitted by the author. And then it goes to the reference committee and then it'll be debated on the floor. And if it is adopted, it'll become a PAMED policy or directive. And then that'll help it guide PAMED's advocacy and action.
Awesome. So, to get a little bit more specific, what does that look like in practice?
You can take any kind of idea that impacts from, anything from public health to internal PAMED processes and operations to advocacy, and you can start it as, and we'll talk about kind of the structure and the whereases are where you kind of set up this is a problem and you explore the problem, you add some, data and information to set that up logically, and we'll talk more about that. And then it'll turn into the resolve statements, which is basically where it says PAMED should do X, Y, and Z. And the resolves can lead to advocacy at the state level, determining legislative positions for legislation that's already, rotating in the PA legislature. Or, if advocacy comes up in the future on a relevant topic, you can introduce something to help us take a stance on it. And then it can also help determine organizational priorities. So that all happens in the resolves, and the whereases are where you kind of set up this is an issue and this is why we're talking about it today.
Awesome. So, if I'm a resident or a student, why should I care about resolutions?
So residents and students, just like any other physician group, are part of the future and a large part of the future of public health and healthcare. And these policies help us to change, the future practice of residents and students, help us change the patient care experience, as well as the scope of practice, which is a huge issue right now, and so things like that are a resolution is what's going to help us influence change in those areas that are really going to be impacting residents and students in their practice in the future, as well as
Mhm.
throughout the rest of their education.
Awesome. And is writing a resolution just for experienced physicians?
No, I think that's a really common misconception. And like you said, because it is so daunting to get, to start getting involved with the resolution writing and the House process, people might think that it's for someone who's been a member for much longer or that has been more involved, but this is where it starts, and this is where residents and students should get involved at first. We encourage residents and students to empower change. And fresh perspectives are valuable. They're, learning right now and they're starting their practice right now. And so what is relevant and pertinent to them in their daily education and practice is extremely important and should be talked about. And many of our strong resolutions do come from newer members, so I think it's incredibly important for them to be involved.
And do I have to author a resolution by myself? It sounds like it could be a little daunting, like we were saying.
Right. No, absolutely not. And we know PAMED has amazing staff, and we have amazing special sections and county sections. So depending on, your involvement with your special section, your county section, or with other physicians that are PAMED members, you are welcome, if you're wanting to write a resolution, you're welcome to collaborate with those groups. If you have an idea, bring it to your special section or your county section leadership. And their members are encouraged to interact with other members or staff even to help refine their ideas and author a resolution. Staff is kind of where that refinement comes in, but if you're authoring the resolution at that step, please reach out to other resources, physician resources, to get your idea out there.
Great. And what's the deadline for submitting a resolution? And once I have submitted it, what are the next steps?
So, great question. The deadline this year is July 1st to submit a resolution. Once the resolution is submitted, it's going to kind of undergo, on our end at PAMED's end, um, a lot of formatting and background research. And once those are presented to our reference committees, we're going to hold our reference committee hearings in our opening session in September. And during that time, there will be, open member testimony. So that's where we can do, well, let me back up. Testimony can also happen online, and then it will also happen during that September opening session for oral testimony. So it goes from written to oral, and all of it is just as important. And then after that, whatever is determined by the reference committee will be presented to the House, whatever recommendation is determined on all the submitted resolutions, and the House will go ahead and vote, debate, and then vote on that resolution as presented.
Great. And all of that information can be found on PAMED's website under the House of Delegates tab, correct?
Yep, we have a slew of resources. We have, we'll upload all of the reference committee documents there when the time comes. There, for this stage right now, where we're earlier in the resolution writing process, there are so many resources on resolution writing. This podcast is going to be uploaded there. You can connect with the speakers, you can connect with staff, and you can see how to do all of that on the HOD website.
Great. And what kind of support do resolution authors have and who helps them?
So that's a great question. So staff is extremely involved. We are going to help once the resolution is submitted, like I mentioned, we're going to help refine language. We're going to look at policy alignment with the PMED policy compendium. We're going to do, add to, the author's research on background from the AMA. We're going to think through feasibility in terms of, how much staff capacity we have, what the financial feasibility is, what the payoff is going to be, if it's within our scope. And so, like, all of those things we'll kind of look through and look at the resolution as a whole and see if we can add that additional information for our reference committees. And so, anyone who wants to submit a resolution should know you're never doing this alone. You have so many people that are supporting you to create positive policy that's going to create amazing change or has the potential to create amazing change. So, and that's why it's not as daunting as people feel like it is because you really do have so much support. And then, like we mentioned, there's a ton of support on the HOD website if you're somebody that wants to read through material. We have our Resolutions 101 page. We have, this video. The speakers recently did a presentation. Dr. Lutz Cannon, he recently did a presentation on how to structure a resolution and how to write one. So we have a ton of stuff out there, and staff is always accessible too.
That's awesome. And it's really nice to hear that it doesn't have to be perfect the first time that you submit it. Um, I think that that will help encourage some people to get involved.
I agree.
And do you need
Um,
to necessarily be an expert on the subject matter?
no, you definitely don't need to be an expert. I think that to an extent, of course, all of our members are, well versed in public health today, in patient care, in physician experience. And so, like, they're bringing that knowledge with them already through the life that they live every day. And I think that's really important to remember. If you're not an expert on a specific topic, but you've identified an idea, or an issue, all you need is to develop a clear idea, do some background research, and our staff, and our, experts on our committees are going to help fill in those gaps to create an effective policy.
That's great. And it's starting to make sense now, the steps and the order that everything gets executed in. Now that we have a little bit more of an understanding of the basics, I'd love to dive into some more nuance and help refine my resolution. What what makes a good quality resolution?
So, I think that a lot of making a good resolution is making sure that it's clear and easy to understand and actionable. So you don't want to submit a resolution that is confusing or that doesn't really give PAMED staff or members kind of a direction, or a reason really to pass the resolution. So it should be clear and easy to understand, actionable, and it should be relevant. It should fit in PAMED's role and scope as a medical society. And then the last thing, and you'll see this when you're filling out your resolution form, there should be a section at the bottom which talks about fiscal impact, so or like the fiscal note. And so we need to think about the feasibility of it financially, and also the staff capacity that we have to, take your actionable point and run with it and do something with it. So make sure that if you're submitting a resolution, you try your best to include a cost estimate outline in the fiscal note, or if it's something that requires funding and how detailed, that funding needs to be. I always say we prefer to have more information than less, but at least try and get started and put some stuff in there about, the line items we can expect so that staff has an easier time understanding how you would use that funding, how much you'll need, and what you'd like to do with it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's something that I hadn't considered previously, is including that financial aspect. What do people think they need but don't necessarily need to submit a resolution?
That is such a good question because again, I think it can get so daunting that your mind is, I'm sure going everywhere of like, "Oh, I want to include this and I want to put this in." So I think again, what's most important is what makes a good resolution is keeping in mind it should be actionable, clear. So what you don't need is perfect wording or a perfect solution policy-wise. You can refine those things by getting involved with staff ahead of time, and using, staff support to help you write the resolution. But if you submit it and it doesn't have perfect wording, or there's like a typo, or the policy solution isn't perfect, again, there are so many steps to the process that it usually ends up getting ironed out by the time it hits the House floor. And then there's more debate, amongst the House floor. So within, testimony, reference committee hearings, and then the House floor, it's easy to just take a great idea and create effective policy from it, even if it's not entirely perfect in its formatting or wording.
Great. And I know that we said you don't necessarily have to be a subject matter expert, but how much research is needed to feel confident in your authorship?
I think that's a really great distinction to make. So I would say keep the research as relevant to the topic as possible. What I would say is lay a foundation in your whereases for your resolves that help you build a logical case. So you should be giving relevant background information, and then you should also be doing some pretty clear research on AMA policy that is standing that may be relevant to what you're trying to submit as a resolution, as well as PAMED policies that are relevant to that topic. And then the last thing is, if you're wanting to create change through advocacy on the state or national level, you should know that PAMED is a state society, and so we can advocate on a state level. If you want to take something up through the AMA delegation of PA, you can put that in your resolves too. So you would then need to research the state level, policies related to that topic, as well as if you're looking to have something sent to the AMA through our PA AMA delegation, using your research on national policy as well to kind of uphold that idea and build that logical case.
That's a really good distinction to make and something to keep in mind for sure. What are some common mistakes that new authors may make when writing a resolution?
The ones that I've seen a lot of are vague asks. So again, we need to keep our resolves clear and actionable. Um, and then another one is duplicating existing policy. So if PMED already has policy that is relevant to, the topic that you're wanting to submit a resolution on, the way to create the strongest policy compendium is to make sure that we're either adding on to that policy, reaffirming it. There are so many other ways that you can do it that you wouldn't be duplicating a policy that already exists. And then the other thing is overcomplicating it. So like I said, keeping it clear, and keeping it kind of like in steps of like, here's the setup for the issue and here's what we can do about it, is going to be really important. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Just make sure you're doing your research when you're writing all of it. And then the last thing we see a lot of is not thinking about feasibility. Because like I also understand it's a really confusing concept. And before I started working here, I never thought about the back end of what goes on and how much staff power is needed or how much funding is needed for new initiatives or new advocacy. So, try your best to think about feasibility. And if that idea needs to be developed more, the staff is happy to help with it.
Great. And mentioning the policy compendium definitely caught my ear there. Um, in your research, if you are on our website and reading through the policy compendium, what are you to do if a policy already addresses the topic that you're interested in?
That's a great question. So I think first, if you see that, it doesn't mean that your resolution that you're writing is going to be irrelevant. There are just some different avenues that you can consider taking if you'd still like to submit that resolution. So your options would be to amend the existing policy. It would be to reaffirm the existing policy or to build on it, which is pretty similar to amending it. So amending it would be, we're going to take out this language, or, the resolution is that we should take out this language from this PAMED policy and add in this language. And, if you're trying to, this is a great idea if you're trying to keep up to date. So if there's been new, provisions in the law or there's been new developments in public health and you want to include those in the current policy, you can amend that policy. The other thing that you can do is you can reaffirm that policy. This keeps the policy active and relevant and kind of says, maybe we passed this in 1992, but it is still relevant in 2026, and we should continue as a society to know that and operate, under that understanding. And then you can also build on it. So if that just means, and it's again very similar to amending it, you would use the language amend, but building on it would just look like after the policy adding on some, other points that maybe weren't in the original policy. So I think, you don't have to start from scratch, and it's often more effective to use one of those avenues to change your compendium than it would be to submit a new policy entirely that is similar to another one that already exists.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered the reaffirmation before. That's interesting to note. And how important is the feasibility in getting something to the floor?
So I think it's very important. The floor, so even if it hits the floor and we haven't considered feasibility through that process, it is, always something that the House will talk about and will mention. So I think it's extremely important because I think that the staff is thinking about the feasibility, our leadership is thinking about feasibility, and the House is going to think about feasibility as well. So what you should be asking yourself is, can PAMED actually do this? Where, in PAMED does this lie? Is it advocacy? Is it operational? And then, as you're writing it, feel free to reach out to those departments at PAMED and ask questions about the feasibility of that resolution because it'll help avoid unrealistic asks and get your resolution to the finish line. And that's going to make you feel really good and it's going to impact positive change. So I think it's extremely important and everybody that interacts with the resolution will think about that. So it's good if the author is able to kind of preemptively hit that point before it gets to anybody else.
And if someone makes a mistake when they're writing, are they stuck with what they've included in that resolution?
No, not at all. So, we've talked a lot about the process, what happens to a resolution after it's submitted. And so I'm sure, now you can kind of tell that in that process, the resolution is seen by so many people that are doing really good work to make sure that it's a good policy change. And so you're not stuck, everything's fixable, and that's what the staff that sees the resolution and works on that background research, as well as our expert committees, are going to be for. And then again, it'll hit the House, and even then, it can undergo changes and kind of change with the House. So I think that it's important to remember that there probably will be changes, or there could be changes, and that's okay because we're going to get your resolution from point A to point B if those changes are something that's reflective of PMED members.
Great. So with all of this information, where should someone start?
Um, So I think that the first thing is identify an issue that you care about, something that, maybe is impacting your education, your practice, or has impacted other people is always a good place to start. But even if you're doing a lot of research on a topic and you've identified an issue in our healthcare system, on a state level, I think that's a great place to start. And then you're going to go ahead and check the existing policy to help lay your groundwork, do your background research, and just draft a basic idea. And then a great place to start is to reach out to your, section leadership, staff, or county leadership to help you develop that idea. And again, like reaching out to Dana is a great idea because she can help you connect with people that are going to help you write that idea and create policy from it.
A great point. And if they want to address maybe some speed bumps that they run into along the way, where can they get that help and where are those resources located?
So, if you're part of a section or a county society, staff is of course accessible to you. We're so happy to help you develop your ideas. You can find PAMED resources online through the HOD website, like we mentioned before. Again, section leadership, if you're in a section and you're, comfortable reaching out to your section leader, please reach out to them. Mentors in your workplace or in your school that, might have a better idea or an idea to help you, help start that writing process for you, reach out to them, use the people in your life as a resource because, healthcare is universal. All of us are part of it in some way or another. And staff is always happy to review the drafts early so that we can make sure that when you submit, you feel confident about the resolution that you've written.
Okay, I feel like this is going to motivate a lot of people. I'm sure people are brainstorming already while they're listening. If you're someone who maybe wants to take a more conservative approach and just kind of start dipping your toes in and not necessarily author something, how do you engage with the policy making process?
So, first, I think that's an amazing question. I think that it's so important for people to be involved, even if they are not fully ready to submit their own resolution. And so, like, once you understand the process of the resolution and where it starts and then where it ends, you can kind of identify points along that timeline to get involved. And so that would look like testifying, written testimony when it opens up on the PMED website, testifying on resolutions that have been submitted. It can look like joining discussions before they get submitted. Maybe your section is looking to submit a resolution, and so that's a really great opportunity to listen to other people talk about it and kind of get a feel for the ropes before you jump in yourself, being involved in those discussions. And so just kind of engaging through sections, through counties. And you should know that if you're in that position, that is still extremely impactful and really important because that's where it starts. And if all you ever do is engage that way, that's okay too, because you're still going to be influencing change, in your own way.
Great. And what's the timeline for submitting that testimony and where does that happen?
So if you are a PMED member, you should get an HOD alert when online testimony opens up. Um, and so that online testimony, when it sends you that notification, it'll have a window of when it is open. And then oral testimony will happen in September. And again, you'll get HOD alerts. Your section will get HOD alerts for that. Um, and all of that timeline is listed on the PAMED website. And we keep it up to date. It'll have, contacts, speaker contacts, staff contacts if you're confused about the timeline or you want to talk to anybody about it. And that's a really great place to start if you want to get involved in testimony.
And does the online or written testimony carry any more weight than doing that orally?
So I think that written testimony is easier for staff and reference committees to reference, um, but both of them are equally as important. And when we do the reference committee hearings and we, then do the testimony with members for oral testimony, there are people in the room that are taking notes. Staff is getting engaged with that meeting as well. So we make sure that testimony is heard and received in either format. But I do think it would be easier to reference if you use the written testimony feature on our website.
Great. And if you're involved in one of our special sections, let's say the medical student section or the residents and fellows, what role do those sections play?
So, like we were talking about before, I think it's a really great entry point for people to start getting involved. It kind of gives you a little bit of support. There might be other people that are in the MSS and RFS that have been doing this for some time that are familiar with the process. They can give you the right contacts. They can, co-author resolutions with you. You can present it as a section. It provides an opportunity for support and collaboration, and it'll help you refine and, co-sponsor ideas with one another.
And as a member, why should you care about the resolution process?
So, I think that members, they push change for our organization and for the state of Pennsylvania and our healthcare system. And I think that's really important to remember when you're engaging with this process. Again, these policies could potentially shape their future practice environment, and patient care systems. And so early involvement is going to also lead to leadership development, in the healthcare sphere. So not only are you affecting positive change, in, Pennsylvania, in our healthcare system, but you're also creating a leadership opportunity for yourself, of being a healthcare leader in PA.
It seems like that would be really rewarding.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like I've talked to some of our members who have seen their ideas become a policy, and the real world impact that it can have once it becomes policy, and they're thrilled to see that happen. And so I think, it's extremely rewarding. And then it's even more rewarding, I can imagine, when you've worked with your special section to get something from point A, to point B, and then through the house, and how good that must feel as a section to accomplish that together as a group, I think really builds, collaboration and energizes people to continue moving forward. So, that and the real world impact is really rewarding for our members.
Yeah, it would be really exciting to get that started so early in your career too. Really neat. So do you have any advice for someone who might have an idea but is hesitant to start engagement?
Yes, I think the main, thing to remember is not to overthink it. What matters is that you're starting a conversation, and that your perspective is valuable. So if you have an idea right now and you're not sure what to do with it, um, you can wait on it until next year, when you're not feeling rushed. So like look, learn the process and then understand the process and then get involved where you feel comfortable is the advice that I would give. And so just taking it easy, taking your time to understand and engaging is going to be extremely valuable, as you learn.
Awesome. And there is some amount of time between now and when the resolutions are due. If someone is interested in learning more, where would they find that information?
So you can go on, the PAMED website. We have our HOD website linked there. The Resolutions 101 page and the Resolutions 101 breakdown, is going to be uploaded, in the near future on social media. We're going to have, you're going to have constant, contact with PAMED staff. If you'd like to reach out to them, they're available. You can reach out to your section leadership. Um, and then we have our PAMED resolution video, like I'd mentioned, from our vice speaker, Dr. Lutz Cannon, uploaded on the resolutions page. And then some really great resources for your research are the AMA and the PMED policy compendium. So the AMA compendium, if you just go into Google and type in, AMA policy finder, they have an easily searchable policy compendium. And then the PAMED policy compendium is on our website, and you can go on, it's in a PDF, version, and you can control F and kind of search for keywords and look through it to see what might help you build your idea a little bit more.
That is awesome. And I thank you so much. This has been great information. So, as we head into the 2026 House of Delegates, every resolution has the potential to shape PAMED's future. We hope that today's conversation helps you take the next steps into bringing your voice to the table. Thanks for being a part of the work. And for more information on PAMED HOD resolutions, visit pamedsoc.org/HOD. Thank you.